Medicine Buddha as the object. So go over the details. Feel like you're sitting in front of an actual Buddha. And keep your concentration on that, on the figure of the Buddha. If you get distracted, bring your focus again back to the Medicine Buddha. If you are getting drowsy, make sure you're sitting up straight. Keep your eyes a wee bit open so some light comes in. Add the visualization of the 3 syllables in Medicine Buddha's crown, throat, and heart, and the light radiating from them into your 3 centers, purifying or healing body, speech, and mind. And then expand the visualization by thinking that you're surrounded by all sentient beings who also need healing. And you can think of specific people you know or figures in society, figures in the world. So people who are suffering, people who are causing other people's suffering because they themselves are miserable. And think of the light from the 3 syllables going out into the 3 centers of all the sentient beings, healing and purifying and bringing realizations. And then let's say the syllables while we do the visualization. And then make the determination for the purpose of your life to be attaining full awakening, so that you'll have the greatest wisdom, compassion, power, and skill to be of benefit to all beings. Do you feel the energy of the syllables when we recite them out loud? Do you feel them in your body? Yeah? Do you feel sometimes how the energy isn't completely smooth, and then other times the energy is quite smooth when you say the syllables? So it has an effect on our mind too. Yeah? And we're beings with bodies and minds, and when our mind is tumultuous, the energies in the body become tumultuous as well. When the energies in the body are shaken up, then the mind responds similarly. Yeah. So it's very helpful to work with this kind of method where you're using both the body and the mind to settle both of them. Because you feel different, don't you, when the energy in your body is settled? Yeah. But when you get revved up, because you got to go here and got to go there and got to do this and got to do that, and you're running around, your physical energy is revved up. It's not very tranquil. And so it's hard for the mind to focus as well. Yeah. Similarly, when the mind is ruminating, go around, oh, what about this, what about that, how can I make this? Then that affects the body. Okay? So good to have some awareness and be able to settle both of them down, because it makes a difference in your receptivity to the Dharma, the receptivity to sentient beings, just even how you feel on a day-to-day basis going around what you're doing. Okay. So we'll go back to the 12 unshakable resolves of the Medicine Buddha. Okay, so we did through 4, right? So when you're hearing about these, look at them 2 ways. One way is, here's the Medicine Buddha's commitment to me and to all sentient beings. And realizing that, then that helps stabilize our refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, because we see their commitment to helping us. We see their qualities that enable them to guide us to awakening. So that's one way to look at the resolves. Another way is, I want to become like the Medicine Buddha, so I want to develop these same kind of unshakable resolves in my mental continuum. And so what would that feel like? And I'm not there yet, so what is hindering me? What do I have to work out to enable me to really have these kind of resolves to benefit others? Okay, so those two ways of looking at them. One of the ways really helps you develop deep refuge. And the second way helps increase your bodhicitta. Okay. So then the fifth one. I vow that when I attain awakening in a future age, if there are limitless and boundless sentient beings who cultivate and practice the pure conduct of my teachings, I will cause them all to be able to follow perfectly the rules of conduct and be complete in the 3 cumulative precepts. Those who slander and offend will, after hearing my name, be able once again to attain purity, and they will not sink to a woeful existence. Okay, so here he's resolving to help all of us in terms of our ethical conduct. Okay, so our ethical conduct, it's the basis of the path. If we don't have good ethical conduct, it's going to be very difficult to generate any kind of other understanding, because we have to start out with the pratimoksha precepts, which are the 5 lay precepts and the different precepts for the monastics. And those regulate actions of body and speech, which are much easier to subdue than actions of mind. Because our mouth and our body don't move until our mind does. So there's some time gap there. So here there are limitless, boundless sentient beings who cultivate and practice the pure conduct of my teachings. So, trying to really act in accordance with the ethical conduct, beginning with the 5 lay precepts. And, you can see that if you keep good ethical conduct, it really eliminates a lot of problems in your life. Because so many of our problems with other people come about due to our very messed up ethical conduct. And, because you do one thing that's not so nice, and then you lie to cover it up, and then people find out you lied, and then you have to deal with the lying, plus you have to deal with the original thing, plus people don't trust you anymore, plus on and on and on. Okay? So, to think that we're going to generate bodhicitta when we can't stop the gross actions of harmful behavior towards sentient beings, that's kind of presumptuous on our part, isn't it? It's like saying, I have infinite love and compassion. My life is dedicated to sentient beings, but I care so much about them that I'm going to, sleep with their partners and lie about it and criticize people behind their back and start factions in my workplace. At the same time, I'm working for the benefit of all sentient beings to lead them to awakening. That's not going to work. Okay? So we have to start out with that ethical conduct. So Medicine Buddha is, promising to help us and inspire us in this regard. So he says, I will cause them to be able to follow perfectly the rules of conduct and to be complete in the 3 cumulative precepts. So the 3 cumulative precepts, sometimes it's said to be the pratimoksha precepts, and then the bodhisattva precepts, and then the tantric precepts, which are increasingly more subtle and difficult to keep as you go up. Because the pratimoksha, 5 lay precepts, monastic precepts, deal mostly with the body and speech, bodhisattva precepts deal with body and speech, but also the mind. You can transgress them just by the way you think. Tantric precepts deal with very subtle levels of mind, so much easier to transgress. Yeah? So it's good to practice them, getting some stability on the lower ones before we go up to the higher ones. Sometimes when they talk about the 3 types of ethical conduct, they're referring to the perfection of ethical conduct, far-reaching ethical conduct, where your 3 types of ethical conduct are abandoning harming others, and then practicing virtue, doing what you can to create merit, collect virtue, and then the 3rd one being benefiting sentient beings. And there's a whole list of how to benefit sentient beings. So sometimes it's like that. In either way, it's training our mind, and the precepts are all designed to help us train our body, speech, and mind. Yeah? So precepts are not rules that are being forced on us by some external power, but they are guidelines, they are trainings, they are precepts that we voluntarily undertake because we know that they will make us more careful with our behavior, and we know they will make it easier for us to restrain from negativities. So we take them for that reason, voluntarily, because we see the benefit. Okay? And then as far as beings who make a mess of their precepts, who slander, yeah, who offend, who transgress their precepts, who are just treat their precepts like nothing, and I don't care if they're there, I feel like doing this, I'm going to do it, and don't bother to confess, don't bother to repent or make amends, but just very cavalier attitude about the guidelines, the trainings they've undertaken, then those people accumulate a tremendous amount of negative karma because, of their whole attitude. And Medicine Buddha is saying here, for those people who act like that, who are way out, he's not going to disown them and kick them out and say, you're trash, rubbish, get out of here. But he's saying, after hearing my name, to be able to once again attain purity, so to make amends for their broken precepts. And also he's saying that he will help them to purify because they will not sink to a woeful existence. They will not have a bad rebirth. Okay, so they need to do a lot of purification, but the Medicine Buddha is committed to teaching them the means to do that purification and witnessing, being a witness to their purification. Yeah. And so in that way, helping even people who have behaved poorly, purely and poorly are close together, who behave poorly to purify so that they can behave purely in the future. Okay? Yeah, because sometimes, it gets to be very difficult when there's somebody who is just transgressing right, left, and center. The feeling is, let's just get rid of this person, And actually, if they break a root precept, such, that in the monastic situation, then they are distancing themselves from the Sangha. So you don't have to evict them. They have chosen by transgressing root precepts that they're out, But aside from that, even if they've come close to that, or even if they have committed root breaks, to not just trash the person and have a very disparaging attitude towards them, yeah, but to have some compassion, and especially with the people who are barely hanging on to their precepts, to help them make amends, and there's all sorts of ways that the Vinaya, the monastic discipline, describes for how to make amends for broken precepts. Yeah, so it really shows the compassion of the Buddhas and, medicine Buddhas saying, I'm going to hang around and help those people. I'm not going to, throw them out and lock the gate. So that's kind of telling us that we should try being kind to them as well. Yeah. That doesn't mean saying, oh, you transgressed your precept. No problem. You went out and had a love affair with somebody while you're wearing robes. No problem. Welcome back. No. No, you may not live in the monastery anymore if you do that. Yeah, because you've chosen to distance yourself from the Sangha. Yeah, but we don't hate those people. But they certainly don't live in the monastery anymore. Okay. Then the sixth great unshakable resolve. I vow that when I attain awakening in a future age, if there are sentient beings whose bodies are inferior, whose sense organs are impaired, maybe they're blind, they're deaf, there's some kind of impediment. It doesn't mean these people are inferior. It just means, there's some added challenge that they have. Okay? People who are ugly, stupid, deaf, blind, mute, bent and lame, hunchback, leprous, convulsive, insane, or who have all sorts of diseases and suffering. Okay, so people with physical ailments, people with mental ailments. Yeah. So what's the name? The book. DSM. I always forget it. DSM, So your DSM, everybody has something now.
Thank you, drug companies.
Yes, thank you, drug companies, And then people grow up with this identity of, I'm somebody who has a disorder. I'm somebody with something wrong. But now there's a disorder for everybody,
That makes the rest of us normal.
Yeah, that makes having a disorder normal. Yeah, really kind of crazy. So, so all these people who, have these impediments, then, medicine Buddha's reaching out with compassion. When they hear my name, they shall attain proper appearances and practical intelligence. All their senses will become perfect, and they shall have neither sickness nor suffering. Okay, so this sounds like, when you read it literally, like the promise at an evangelical, gathering in Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Georgia, Kentucky, yes. Yeah, Kentucky, West Virginia. Okay. It's really kind of amazing how we manage to hang together as one country, isn't it? Considering the diversity in views that people in this country have. It's amazing that we really hang together. But they're talking about Texit now.
No.
Yeah, because Texas for a long time has been talking about exiting. Yeah, it's okay with me.
They were a nation.
Yeah, they were a nation, and there's all these people even before, Brexit has been talking about exiting. So it's okay. Yeah, Rick Perry, Ted Cruz, you can run your own nation. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that because they're the people that I put. When we do the visualization of purifying all sentient beings, I have the whole U.S. Congress and beyond the U.S. Congress in my visualization. I have Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton sitting next to each other, both of them peaceful, with the light from the medicine Buddha flowing into their body, speech, and mind. You know? I'm wondering when it's going to happen, but it helps, you know, to imagine this for these people. Yeah, well, someday maybe they can calm down. Paul Ryan's gone in next to them too. Yeah. Yeah, he's in there. Yeah. And what's his other name? Huckleberry? Hucklebee. Huckleberry. Well, you know, kind of. I got it. Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting close. Okay, you know, so all these people. So it sounds like, you know, a tent revival. Isn't that what you call it? A tent revival. Yeah. That all they're going to hear is medicine Buddha and then suddenly cured. You know, I don't think that's what's being promised here. Okay? I think there's some subtler meaning to hearing the name of medicine Buddha. Yeah, I don't think it means just our ears hearing it. I think it means somehow in our heart hearing that name and understanding what that name means, understanding what being a medicine Buddha entails, you know, and being inspired by it, and also having accumulated enough good karma so that these kinds of things can happen. You know, I do believe that sometimes, I mean, you see quite amazing things happen in the medical field. Tanya just sent me an article about some man who is missing 90% of his brain, but he functions normally. Figure that one out. You know, so the karma's quite powerful, and you know, our virtue is what enables us to connect to the healing power, the enlightening influence of the Buddhas. So if we purify, if we create merit, then we can be open to this healing energy and this awakening influence. Yeah. So that's up to us. Yeah. What is it? There's some joke about. Yeah. Yeah, that one. You want to tell it?
There's a show, it has various forms, but basically the person is saying, either Buddha, 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 or God, 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 please let me win the lotto, and they keep asking, finally the being says, buy a ticket.
Yeah.
They bought a ticket, but they want to win.
Yeah. So the idea is, you know, there's the influence from the Buddha, but we have to show up from our side and do what we need to be open to it. Otherwise, it's like thinking you're going to win the lottery without buying a ticket. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we're kind of dumb like that, aren't we? Yeah. So, yeah, so I think that fits in very much here from our side to create merit, purify, and then, you know, tremendous kind of healing, physical and emotional, mental can occur. Or even if it's not tremendous, it's some healing, which is good, isn't it? Yeah. Then the seventh one, I vow that when I attain awakening in a future age, if there are any sentient beings who are ill and oppressed, who have nowhere to go and nothing to return to, who have neither doctor nor medicine, neither relatives nor immediate family, who are destitute and whose sufferings are acute. Yeah, how many refugees are there in the world? How many millions of refugees? 5? 65 million
It's the highest number
ever.
of the planet.
Yeah, in the record of the planet, 65 million refugees. Yeah, it's astounding.
Is that a recent consensus about that?
Yes.
Yeah. And I forget in Syria alone how many refugees there are and how many displaced persons within Syria. But it's, it's well over a quarter of the population. Okay, so these people, ill and oppressed, nowhere to go, nothing to return to. Their whole houses have been bombed out. Neither doctor nor medicine, because the forces that are supposed to help have bombed their hospitals. Neither relatives nor immediate family, nor governments with compassion who want to let these people in the country. Yeah. Who are destitute and whose sufferings are acute. Yeah. They say when Marco Rubio was still in the contest that his father probably would not have been allowed into the U.S. based on the immigration policy Rubio wanted to effect. Yeah, and considering, except for the people who are Native Americans, everybody in this country is an immigrant. Yeah. I don't know, I find it totally... Anyway. It's unbelievable. And this happened during World War II. Our country did not allow Jews in the country who were fleeing from Europe. Yeah. Now we don't allow Syrians in. We allow a handful. We vow to bring many in. We don't let them in. Even for people who don't come from war-torn areas, what you have to do to get a visa in this country is astounding, because we have to do it. We have several of our monastics are from outside the country. Just to get a religious worker's visa, you have to send in, and I'm not exaggerating, this much paper. So you have to send 2 copies, so many forms, we have to send pictures of the Abbey, of our pantry, of our kitchen, of the bedroom where the person's going to sleep. We have to send newsletters and flyers and bank statements, and that person has to send all the things proving that they were a Buddhist in their country where they lived before, and on and on. It's amazing. And this is just for a religious worker visa. From our friendly countries,
Homeland Security paid a visit to us.
Yeah. Yeah, even from Canada, astounding what she had to go through. Yeah. And it's not cheap. Yeah, definitely not cheap. Okay. So, Medicine Buddha is vowing to help these people. Okay. So, as soon as my name passes through their ears, they will be cured of all their diseases, and they will be peaceful and joyous in mind and body. They will have plentiful families and property, and they will personally experience the supreme awakening. So here, he's also saying that they will experience supreme awakening. He's really adding that on for these people. Okay. So again, I don't think it's just a question of hearing the name, but of having some connection, having faith, wanting to follow the path. Yeah. So if you have some previous understanding, and this is very much the idea of we practice while we're alive and put so many imprints in our mind stream while we're alive. And then when we're dying, hopefully we can remember on our own. But if we can't, we will have Dharma friends around who will say, Medicine Buddha, or, Chenrezig, who will do the practice and recite the mantra and, recite the four immeasurables. Recite Shantideva's text to us while we're actively dying. And then through through hearing that, then to remember our practice and to remember, our aspirations. And if we're able to come home to those aspirations while we're dying, then we'll definitely have a good rebirth. It's impossible for negative karma to ripen at that time when we have a virtuous mental state. Okay, but we have to plant the seeds. And then also you can think, in future life, if we plant a lot of seeds this life, then future life, you see a Buddha statue, you see a monastic, you hear a mantra, you're attracted to it, you want to come near, you're able to meet the Dharma when you're very young. When we were in Singapore, we met this one boy from Malaysia, remember? He was like 12 or 13, and he knew all these kind of mantras and recitations by heart, even though it seemed like he hadn't learned them in that lifetime. But he, had heard chanting, and he was very drawn to it, and just started doing it himself. So, we want to be that kind of person that be able to find the Dharma when we're still young. Okay, then the eighth great vow. I vow that when I attain awakening in a future age, if there are any women who suffer from any of the 100 woes that befall women who are wearied at the end of their lives and wish to abandon their female form, when these women hear my name, they will all obtain transformation in rebirth from female into male physical forms. They all will personally experience the supreme awakening. So I remember many years ago when leading a Medicine Buddha retreat at Cloud Mountain, we came to this precept and the room exploded. Okay? And it was very interesting because some people read this precept as it's saying women are inferior, and that you don't want to have a woman's rebirth, and women are inferior, so they all should pray to be born men. So some of the people interpret it that way. They were really upset. There was another woman there who said, I feel like Medicine Buddha really understands what I've been through. She had had a difficult pregnancy. She had been a single mother. It was difficult raising her son, and she felt, oh, Medicine Buddha understands what I've had to go through. So it was very, very interesting to hear different people's reactions to this precept. Not this precept, this unshakable resolve. Because, if you think of it, if there are women who suffer from any of the 100 woes that befall women, well, what are some of the woes that we have to deal with? Hot flashes are nothing. Sexual harassment. Sexual assault. Rape. Not being valued. Made into a sexual object. Childbirth is difficult. They don't call it labor for no reason. Not being taken seriously. have discrimination, having glass ceilings everywhere you go.
Disrespect.
Yeah, disrespect. Not your word is not taken for as anything meaningful. Yeah.
Is it still like that?
You bet it's like that.
Oh,
In
absolutely.
Tampa, from way back when I was, young.
Yeah, it doesn't change in one generation. No, it's still like that. Yeah. And this is part of the thing, in Hillary's campaign that she's up against. All these people are commenting about how she should dress and how she should look, as if that made any difference at all. Yeah. And how she talks, because as a woman, if a woman said the same thing, as a man did, she's, if she were assertive like a man is, she's called a bitch, she's called aggressive, she's called bossy. Yeah. Yeah, she's screaming, she's shrill.
One of the
Yeah.
candidates said that she should be spanked.
Yeah, somebody's saying she should be spanked. I mean, this is, yeah. So it's not just talking about things like that. It's talking about domestic abuse, how many women are killed by their partners or their husbands. Yeah. So it's talking also about those kinds of things. And so you can read this Unshakable Resolve as he's really sticking up for women. Yeah. Of course, having a world in which you have all men is not going to work. Yeah. And in fact, if you no longer had women, you would no longer have men either. Okay. But when you look here, when it talks about the 100 woes that befall women, you can think of the kind of things that women face when trying to do things in society. Whenever there is a letter written to the Abbey by somebody who, is unfamiliar with us, yeah, it's always addressed to the abbot, and it starts, "Dear Sir." Because anybody who's the head of a monastery must be a man. That's just the assumption, And this goes on in Buddhist organizations as well. So, anyway. So I think Medicine Buddha is kind of standing up here. We could certainly read it like that and saying, because when he's talking in the previous ones about people being deaf or blind or having a mental or physical illness, there's no idea in our minds that these people are inferior. Yes, they experience discrimination, but they're not inferior. So it's interesting that some people read inferiority into this precept. Yeah. Yes.
I think I do right away, because it's very strange for me to think that, basically the 100 woes that the women go through are basically all caused by men. So why then would he then almost justify that by turning women into men? And then but then I was struck with, then there would be no women, therefore that would really kind of be a punishment to men. I don't know.
Yeah. I think in these Unshakable Resolves that they're not thinking of the long-term social repercussions. I think it's a thing of expressing, a way to express compassion. So like you said, a lot of the things that women have to experience are caused by men, but they're also caused by women buying into what society said. It's not just men objectifying women and making them sexual objects. It's women letting themselves and seeing themselves as my only worth is how I look. You know, of course that came through culture, yeah, but, you know, we have to be so careful what we buy into. Yeah. And I think here, too, it's probably talking about some of the physical difficulties of childbirth. When you think at the time of ancient India, you know, there were no cesarean rebirths. If you had breech, you know, a breech birth, yeah, or even you had a regular birth, how many women died in childbirth? You know, there was no opportunity to have a blood transfusion, yeah, or people who had fistulas afterwards, no way to get that repaired. So you know, hundreds of years ago, I mean, well, thousands too, you know, but even hundreds, you know, before modern medicine, childbirth is, you know, extremely dangerous. And in India today, yeah.
And STIs.
Hmm? Yeah.
STIs, sexually transmitted infections.
Oh, okay, STD. Oh, I'm used with STD. Okay, yeah, but definitely those two.
And then
Yeah.
having multiple children, nursing for years after year after year after year after year after year.
Yeah, where there's no birth control,
Right.
and then you know half of you're married off as soon as you hit puberty, and you start having kids when you're 13, 14 years old, and then every year you have a kid. What does that do to your body? Yeah.
And then you're the property of the husband and his family.
Yeah, in ancient India, the women of the property, they had to leave their family, go to live at the husband's family where they were servants. Yeah, and the mother-in-law, even though she had experienced the same thing, always favored her son over her daughter-in-law. Yeah, because the men have the power in the culture. And and not having any freedom, you know, because in ancient India, any woman who was out on the street alone was considered a prostitute. That's why the nuns have many precepts about not being able to go into a town alone, because in ancient India, they were scorned and called prostitutes then, and it made them open to any kind of sexual advancement. Yeah. Yeah, and then the Sangha experiences the backlash, and the person she's blamed if she's raped, or et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So these kinds of things that, you know, were really dangerous at the time of the medicine Buddha.
Venerable, I think we always forget that when we look at Tao like this, to have the capacity to imagine a society in which women are equal is brand new in terms of the history of the planet.
Yeah.
And so what else would be Tao up until, 50 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah.
The only alternative.
Yeah, okay, this is in reply to your question. The only alternative up to 50 years ago was, pray for a male rebirth. And when you think in our country, it hasn't even been 100 years since women have been allowed to vote. Isn't that astounding? I find that totally astounding.
African Americans got the vote first.
Yeah.
Well, I think, what year was it, 1920? When did women get the vote?
1920, yeah. 19, or sometimes they say 1919, but 1920.
So it was about 25 years before I was born that women got the vote.
Yeah. I know, that's shocking, isn't it?
And
Yeah.
when I was a young woman, it was, you could not buy a home without your father, your brother, your husband.
Yes. Yeah.
When I was a young woman.
Yeah.
And you certainly couldn't go to medical school. Only a very few with a lot of doctors and families
Mm-hmm.
went to medical school.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just even in our lifetime, things have changed astoundingly. Yeah. And you look at the rest of the planet, how many women have the opportunities that we have in this country. I don't want to be born in Saudi Arabia, thank you very much. You know?
My great-grandmother had bound feet.
Had what?
Bound feet.
Bound feet. Your great-grandmother had bound feet. Yeah. Yeah. Just a few inches long. Did you know her? Was she alive when you were born? Yeah. Yeah. Very difficult to walk. Yeah. Painful to walk. Okay.
Then what it does psychologically, even though we have a lot more rights than we did, we're the same generation, and there's like some anger of those things that we couldn't do.
Mm.
My father didn't believe in educating women.
Yeah, well, my father's comment was, when they were saying, well, she wants to go to college, she wants to go to university, why educate a girl? Seriously, he said that. Because he's going to get married and have children.
Yeah. Yeah, or if you went to college, it was to get your MRS degree.
Well, that was my argument with my dad, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So you can see, it hasn't been that long. And in most of the world still, women don't have equal rights. Hmm? Okay. Okay. So that was 8, now going on to 9. I vow that when I attain awakening in a future age, I will cause all sentient beings to escape from Mara's net. They will be freed from the fetters of all deviant paths. If there are those who have sunk into various negative views as dense as a jungle, I will embrace them and establish them in correct views. I will gradually cause them to cultivate and study all the bodhisattva practices, and they will soon personally experience the supreme awakening. Okay, so all those beings with wrong views who are following wrong paths, yeah, I mean, this is, you look at the people who have been brainwashed by ISIS. I mean, when we talk about wrong views, remember Friday night we were talking about wrong views, deviant paths we've talked about this week, thinking that by killing other people you're going to have a heavenly rebirth, that's something pleasing. I mean, that's a pretty deviant path, isn't it? Yeah. And so we look in many kinds of religions and views, totally wrong views about ethical conduct, what you're supposed to practice and abandon. And so those people who have that kind of view then get reborn in the lower realms. Similarly for people who are kind of scientific reductionists but don't have a sense of secular ethics. This is why His Holiness is pushing secular ethics so much for those people. You okay, fine, you don't have a religion, that's okay. But here are reasons to keep good ethical conduct even if you don't have a religion. Yeah, but for some people who just have the view, well, when we die, there's nothing, so might as well do whatever I want as long as I don't get caught, because there's no repercussions, and I don't really care what happens to other people. Yeah, so those kind of wrong views, people thinking that animal sacrifice will bring them liberation, that they should kill goats and pigs. And I mean, in Nepal every year, horrific animal sacrifice. It's dreadful. The blood throws, thousands of animals are killed. Yeah, and some ancestor worship practices. You slaughter animals, offer them on behalf of your ancestors. So, all these kinds of wrong views. Yeah. Wrong views of ethical conduct, but also wrong views that, like there's a creator God. At least with a creator God, there's a reason to keep ethical conduct, and that's quite good, and that's why we say that all religions benefit people, because they teach some level of ethical conduct, and so we respect all the religions that do that. And if that's what helps somebody keep good ethical conduct, great. Yeah? We don't try and say everybody has to be a Buddhist. Yeah? But we do realize that if somebody wants to get to the higher paths, if you want to realize emptiness, that, your view of a creator has to change. Yeah? Because the view of the creator is of an inherently existent, absolute, permanent entity, which is the opposite of what emptiness is talking about, the way things exist. Okay, so Medicine Buddha is saying, I'm going to help all these people. Okay, so imagine this. All these people who are not Buddhist, who are not Buddhist, he's going to gradually cause them to cultivate and study all the bodhisattva practices. In other words, to cultivate and study generosity, ethical conduct, fortitude, joyous effort, meditative stabilization, wisdom, qualities that anybody would benefit from. Okay? So he's not saying, you aren't a Buddhist, you're going to hell. Yeah? Medicine Buddha isn't saying that. He isn't saying, unless you become a Buddhist, you're going to hell. He's saying, even those people who have, discordant views, who keep horrible ethical conduct because of them, even those people are committing to lead to full awakening. That's really something, isn't it? Yeah. 10. I vow that when I attain awakening in a future age, if, according to that which is recorded in the king's law, in other words, according to the government's law, there are any sentient beings who are bound and whipped, tied up and thrown into prison, or who will be subjected to capital punishment, and to whom boundlessly catastrophic difficulties occur that are humiliating, grievous, and distressing, their bodies and minds suffering with bitterness. If such persons hear my name due to the awesome spiritual force of my auspicious virtues, they will be freed from all sorrows and suffering. Yeah? So that's powerful, isn't it? All the people who are on death row for crimes they didn't commit, even for crimes they did commit. I'm in contact with some people who were juvenile, who committed murder when they were juveniles and were given sentences, life sentences without parole. Yeah, which the Supreme Court recently, just a year or two, overturned, and then just even more recently decided that it should be applied retroactively. Yeah, so, and especially, a couple of these people, even when I visited them, some years ago, I visited these two young men in a prison in Missouri. And it was either the warden or the assistant warden, I can't remember which, who escorted me in and out. He told me when we were leaving, they don't need to be incarcerated. Because he knew them, and he, they were completely changed people. So even these people, even the people who haven't changed, who are stuck in their own ways, who want to get out and go back to their gangs, even the people that fill our prisons who need psychological help rather than incarceration. And I know a few of those too, people who write me. And you probably read the letters too. You can tell these people they are mentally ill and they aren't getting the help they need. And when they do get released, like I told you before, they're given $20 or $40 if they're lucky, and a bus ticket and said, go and make a life for yourself. And people who are sex offenders, yeah, who beyond their fulfilling their sentence are kept incarcerated as civil incarceration for crimes that they haven't yet committed, but the government fears they will commit. So I know men like this. They were sentenced, they served their sentence, they're due to be released, the government keeps them in prison. Seems like illegal to me. Yeah. Okay. And even people who, nobody likes the idea of sexual offenses. It's something very scary, something very awful. But even for the people who have changed, they have difficulty getting a job. Yeah. Even the people who weren't in for any kind of sex crimes, who were in for something else, so difficult to get a job after you're released from prison. It's as if society is saying, we'll let you out, you'll reoffend, you'll come back. And that's just what the private prisons love, now that we have private, for-profit prisons. Okay? I'm sorry, I can't help but apply what I'm understanding in Buddhism to present society. I can't not do that. Yeah. Okay. Get off that soapbox, children. But I think our spiritual beliefs should permeate how we act and relate in society in large. One example, excuse me, Singaporeans, I love you all dearly, okay, as you know. And one of my Singapore students, we were in the car one day going someplace, and we were talking about, because Singapore gives you the death sentence if you take illegal drugs in the country. Capital punishment for illegal drugs. So there had just been some man from Malaysia who had come in with some quantity, I don't think it was enormous, of drugs. 800 grams, so not even a kg. Yeah, a little bit over a pound. Maybe that's probably like a pound and a half, pound and 3/4. And so he was given capital punishment. So we were talking about this in the car. And my student loves the Dharma, very, very strong refuge, goes to His Holiness's teachings whenever he can, and keeps his daily commitments. So I said, wow, I think this is too much to kill somebody over this. And even for no matter how horrific the person did, I don't think state-authorized murder is the way. And he was so shocked. He said, but the government made this rule, and this is what we should do. These people broke the law. They should be killed.
You got the law from the British.
Yeah. Okay, so the law from the British passed the buck, huh? But, he had never, ever thought in all of his Buddhist studies, in any of his meditations, about applying the first precept to society as a whole. Yeah, he took it as a personal precept for himself. And he even abandoned jobs that, because he worked in medical research, he even did not take jobs that would require him killing an animal. Yeah, he kept that precept very well, but he never related it to broader society. Yeah? So he heard an earful from me. Okay, but to me it's like I've got to relate this to my responsibility as a citizen of a country. Yeah? Mm-hmm.
There was a study, psychological study once, and there is a difference sometimes between men and women is how they judge a person.
Mm-hmm.
Men tend to be, this is the rule, this is the consequence. If they did it, they deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And women tend to be, no, we gotta look at the circumstances and consider the circumstances before we make a judgment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there could be some,
Mm-hmm.
there's a sociological study that showed that men and women respond differently to these kinds of things. Yeah. Could be. Yeah.
I also just agree in having just applied the teachings to the everyday context. Before I'd done that, and kind of had, deeper thinking about our political systems, our economic systems, and how we're often told that they're just sciences, and that they behave according to almost scientific, ways. But when we actually look at those philosophies and see that, the underlying principles of Western economic thought are based on the idea that we are individuals, that we are rational, and we are, and that is what is driving, that's, I think it just kind of brings to light that even our economic, our political systems,
Yeah.
and modes of thought are constructions of our own thinking.
Oh, definitely.
But we're then
Yeah.
taught through law that is national, state level, even international law, the UN, that these laws are like a science, that
Mm.
that they should be the dharma, that they should be the law.
Yeah.
And they really are just constructs.
They're constructs from our mind. Even in universities, you study political science, don't you? As if politics were a science. Yeah. And you're saying to really look deeply upon the values, principles, preconceptions that our whole political, economic, legal system is built upon. And, to bring our spiritual practice into that. Yeah. And it's quite interesting. You should really listen to the Thursday night teachings, because Nagarjuna, this is what we'll be doing tonight. His precious garland is he is teaching one of his friends and benefactors who is a monarch. He's teaching this person the Dharma. So of course he teaches them ethical conduct and emptiness, so he can have a good rebirth and attain awakening. And in the chapter we're starting tonight, he's also going to teach them about policy, and how to choose, the criteria for choosing ministers, how to treat prisoners, how to treat other countries. It's quite amazing, Nagarjuna is teaching him, also in the previous chapter, we saw too, how to be a good leader. Yeah, so, if Nagarjuna could do it, we can too. Okay? Yeah, and apply these things to our life, yeah.
And just for background, because this is something that confuses me all the time, and I've never asked, and I should. What are the origins of the sutras? I mean, do they come from a specific time period in India, or is it something that's been accumulated over time?
Yeah, no, these kind of sutras began to appear, around the 1st century AD, some a few before. I think Prajnaparamita might have appeared the 1st century BC. I can't remember exactly. But, very early on. Yeah. And they were taught widely in India, and they spread to East Asia. Yeah.
Were they passed down verbally first, I presume?
These ones, many of them were probably passed on verbally, but because they appeared publicly, after writing became more prominent in society, I think they also were written down. And also in many of the sutras, there's something at the end who says people who write these sutras down, it's a very virtuous thing to do that. Yeah. But I'm sure many were passed on privately. Because, even now, many of, like the Amitabha Sutra, I'm sure this one, many people have it memorized and they chant it, Okay, so I want to get through, we're going over time, but, Okay, so then 11. I vow that when I attain awakening in a future age, if there are any sentient beings who are tormented by hunger and thirst, and who create bad karma in their desperate search for sustenance, because this is what happens often, when you're disadvantaged, the only recourse you have is to do negativity. One of the inmates that I write to, he's now out. He lives in Flint, Michigan. I don't know what he's going through in Flint, if he can even drink the water. But he was maybe 18 or 19, robbery, with a gun, which he had no intention to use the gun. But he told me he was the oldest of 4 children in his family. And he said when you open the refrigerator and all you find is a box of baking soda, then you need to do something to help your siblings. So that's why he did that and wound up with a hefty prison sentence. Okay, so this is, so people who have tormented by hunger and thirst, who create bad karma in their desperate search for sustenance. If they hear my name and firmly retain it in their minds and hold to it, then I will provide them first with incomparably marvelous food and drink to fully satisfy their bodies. Afterwards, through providing them with the taste of the teaching, they will ultimately become peaceful and joyous and well established in them. So first nourishing them physically, then nourishing them spiritually. Okay? And how important it is to nourish somebody physically before because until they have something in their stomach, they're not going to be able to listen to the teachings. Until they have a roof over their head, they can't listen to the teachings. Then 12th, the 12th great vow. I vow when I attain awakening in a future age, if there are any sentient beings who are poor and having no clothing, are annoyed and irritated through the day and night by flies and mosquitoes, heat and cold, even if they have clothing, if they hear my name and firmly retain it in their minds and hold to it, in accordance with their wishes, they will obtain all sorts of superior and marvelous clothing. They will also obtain every precious adornment, garlands, powder, incense, music, and the enjoyment of various performing arts. I shall cause them to have abundance, whatever their hearts desire. Okay? So Manjushri, these are the 12 subtle, so he's saying subtle, meaning that we have to read something into all of these, yeah. These are the 12 subtle, sublime, and superior unshakable resolves expressed by that Lord, Master of Healing, the lapis lazuli radiance Tathagata, when he set out onto the Bodhisattva path. Okay. So, another way to think about this in your practice is to think about where does your inclination naturally go? To what kind of people suffering from what kind of ailments does your compassion naturally flow? And where do you have the talents to really be of benefit to those people? And in what way can you be of benefit to them? And then thinking, you don't need to wait until you first enter the Bodhisattva path to make these kind of unshakable resolves. We can make them now, you know, to be able to benefit certain kinds of people. And, you know, and then do that as much as we can in this life and in future lives.
Can you
Yeah.
include animals in that?
Yes, we can definitely include animals. That you will, you know, make them all become human beings who meet the Dharma